name is Prince Michael of Sealand, and I'm really pleased to speak to you guys. It's a bit of a long story, I suppose, but way back in the 1960s, there was a phenomenon called pirate radio, and the BBC, which was a British broadcasting company in the United Kingdom, were the only people that had the radio stations, and they didn't play any pop music. They played pop music for I think 2 hours or an hour on a Sunday, which was the top 20, and that was it, and that's all the kids ever heard. So someone had this idea to put a transmitter on a ship outside territorial limits in international water and broadcast pop music for the kids, plus, of course, advertising to pay for it. There was no commercial radio in the UK at the time either. So several stations came on the air on ships, and then some people, including one being my father, decided to broadcast from one of the old forts that was in international waters. And he went out to this fort called the Knock John Towers, which was on the Knock John sandbank. And he started broadcasting. His station was called Radio Essex, and it became a 24-hour-a-day radio station. It was quite a very, very interesting time. I mean, I think I was probably 12 years old myself. So, but I do remember it, and I remember going out there. And I remember going out there and staying for Christmas. They'd only stayed on the air for, I think, a year and a half. Yeah. And then the government brought in legislation to bring that fortress and some of the others inside territorial limits. So my father was prosecuted, had to close the radio station down. So he looked around for a better jurisdiction to put the radio station. And Christmas Eve 1966, we went to what was called Rough Towers, a naval fortress in the North Sea. It's 8 miles off Felixstowe in Suffolk, off the British coast. And we took it over. And my dad took all his radio equipment over there and all the disc jockeys and DJs, and had every plan to put the station back on the air. And then he changed his mind. He had this bizarre idea to declare independence. So we designed a flag, and we designed stamps, coins, passports, and we had the press out and raised the flag in front of the national newspapers and international press. And there we are, 1967. September the 2nd, 1967, which incidentally, and I'm sure this is why he did it, it was my mother's birthday. Ooh. And he made her a princess on her birthday, so it was a very, very romantic gesture. Oh, it's an Irish name, Ronan O Rahilly, who actually passed away the other day. Yeah, he died, I think, just over a week ago now. So he was quite an interesting guy. He was the first man to put a radio station on a ship in the UK. But the story I was always told was that his father, and I know that his father did, his father had a shipyard in Ireland, and some Americans brought a ship over and they wanted to put a radio station on the ship. And obviously, being his father, O'Reilly heard about it. And O'Reilly was in London, and he was, I think he ran a nightclub, and he had a record label, where he managed people. In fact, quite interestingly, Ronan O Rahilly managed a fellow called George Lazenby, and George Lazenby was probably the naffest James Bond there ever was. But he got the acting job of being James Bond in one of the films. What was it called? On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and he was a pretty wooden actor. But anyway, after the film was made, he was offered the contract to make, I think, another 3 or 4 films, and Ronan O Rahilly talked him out of it. He said, "Oh, James Bond films, no one's ever going to bother with them. No, you want to do something else. It's not a good film to be in." So that was probably the worst decision he ever made for anybody in his life. But so O'Reilly put this ship together. So there was 2 ships, I think, in his shipyard in Ireland, and he convinced the other people to get involved as Radio Caroline South and Radio Caroline North. So one of them was an old ferry, the Frederica, that went up off the Isle of Man on the west coast and broadcast, and the other one was the Mi Amigo, which came down to very near where Sealand is now, and broadcast from there. So that, but when we took Sealand over in 1966, Ronan O Rahilly had, and this was just after what's the name of the law? Anyway, I'll tell you. When we took Sealand over in 1966, O'Reilly had 2 people on there, and we just took them ashore. I mean, if you read in the press or what they said when they got back, all these heavies turned up with shotguns and iron bars. It wasn't the case. We just climbed up there and said, "Pack your bag, boys. You're going home." It was Christmas Eve, 1966. I fired some warning shots across the bow of a government boat. When was that? That was in 1966, 67, wasn't it? And that ended up in court. And I was charged with having a firearm in the United Kingdom and also attempted murder, I think, or however they phrased it. Well, it wasn't, because they were just warning shots across the bow in the water. But all that aside, we fought it on jurisdiction, and we won the case. And the old judge that sat in the chair presiding over the whole thing, he had the red cloak on and everything else, and like the hanging judge's big white wig, and it was all, quite an intimidating sort of thing. But it was found that they had no jurisdiction over us, so we won the day. Mainly, I think my father's original idea was to have a poke at the British government, probably because it closed his radio station down. I mean, he was wounded about 8 times during the war. He was a great patriot, and until the day he died, he would have said, if Queen and country need me, I would step up to the mark. So it wasn't like that. But he didn't like the bureaucracy and petty officialdom. And when we took Sealand over, the customs and excise tried to stop us. They were opening tins of beans and spoiling all the food, and chasing him around day and night when he was trying to basically just take food out of his family. We were out there, so that was the main thing. I mean, Sealand's got a huge following now, but I'm sure you've been on our website, sealandgov.org. And it's so totally supported by the public from all around the world. We market noble titles. I just had this idea a few years ago. I read somewhere that French kings used to finance their wars. 13th century French kings used to finance their wars by selling letters of marque or noble titles. That's a great idea, and we just have a huge following, and it pays for all expenses, which is obviously quite expensive being offshore and everything. And it was a huge financial struggle in the beginning, but it pays for itself now. And every day people come forward, more and more ideas, and wanted to join, and it's just carried on just forever. Holding the Fort is it's kind of an autobiography, but also the history of Sealand as I remember it. And I wrote it because a friend of mine, he became a friend of mine to the fact that he's a Hollywood film producer, and he came to see me and he bought the film rights a few years ago, and he wrote a film script, and he said, "It's a love story, man." I said, no, it's more like bang, crash, wallop, lethal weapon, No, man, it's a love story. Mum and Dad. I said, well, yeah, they really loved each other, but the story of Sealand is a more violence and adventure and intrigue and stormy weather. No, man, it's a love story. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, if it's a love story and it's love stories sell films, then you do that, but I'll write the book, warts and all, exactly how it was, and which is what I did. So my book, Holding the Fort, you can get it on the website, or it's on Amazon and Kindle and everything. Yes, we've been to certain meetings, and we went to Helsinki in Finland for like a big thing, like more of an exhibition. Barcelona, Argentina, Spain. I said Barcelona, that's Spain. All over the world, different places, Mexico. But we don't tend to mingle with them too much, because I think we kind of think that we're a bit more of a serious thing. I mean, most of them are artists, these guys that do it, and it's easy, and you can do it, and you declare independence in your front room or whatever. But all the blood, sweat, and tears, and expense and problems we've had with Sealand, we think it's just a little bit a step up a level. But they're great people, and I've met loads of them. And these people, create micronations, and I've had some really good times with them. At the moment, I'm in England. I was here when the lockdown. I'm sure you've got the lockdown in Malaysia where you are. We had it's quite a serious lockdown here. Out on Sealand, obviously we've got a lockdown there as well, so we don't want to take any infection out there. But so I'm in the UK right now. I have a home in the UK. I have a wife, children, grandchildren, so I'm around them. Depends. I mean, sometimes there's one person out there, and sometimes there's as many as 50 people out there. It really depends what's going on at the time. But I mean, when we had Havenco going out there, which was a server farm, we constantly had about 20 people out there all the time. I think it's I get it. I understand people want a little bit of freedom from government, and they want to maybe experience a little bit of being able to make their own rules and regulations. There's a lot of them about the world, and I mean, some more than others. Some actually have a little bit of credence, and some don't. But what we did, we found some land or fortress that was terra nullius, which means it was no man's land. It was in international waters. It was the fortress was built during a time of war, so no one cared that the British government built it there. It was abandoned after the war, and according to international law, they probably should have destroyed it, and they didn't. So they abandoned the fortress. They abandoned the sovereignty. There is nowhere else in the world you could repeat this thing. So it's a bit of a one-off thing, We're after recognition. I'm not saying it would be a bad thing to have. I mean, and we've been offered recognition in the past by countries that perhaps would not be the ones to take recognition from. But we've never felt the need for recognition. But it was recognition, the fact that that was after the 1978 troubles, and a diplomat came out to negotiate the release of a guy that was in our jail for treason, and the German government asked the British government to do something, and the British government said there's nothing they can and will do, and so Germany had to deal with that direct, and we took the guy off the helicopter, the diplomat, we stamped his passport with a Sealand stamp, and eventually we talked to him. But it was an interesting time.